What would a Nightmare on Elm Street movie be like if they were given the Halloween 2018 Blumhouse treatment? So I'm going to do this off script just because I wanted to be a little bit more sincere with how I wanted to do this. I even got the headphones on, which I normally don't wear for these kind of videos, but this time around I wanted to do something a little bit different and something that felt a little bit more comfortable. And that would be, what would a Nightmare on Elm Street reboot slash whatever you want to call it, scaling back the timeline like they did for Halloween in 2018, what would that look like? And the first thing I thought of originally, which I said at some point in some of my other videos, about scaling the Nightmare series back to part 3 and working from there. But then I began to think about, what if you actually went further beyond? What if you only used A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 1 and started from there? What would the movie really look like if that was the case? And then I began thinking, and I came up with a bit of an idea of what you could expect from something like that, and something that may even give a reason as to why an older Freddy Krueger may make an appearance. Because, I mean, keep in mind, at the end of A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 1, Freddy goes to attack Nancy after she turns her back to him and draining him of his power. He looks like he sort of fades right into her, sort of like phases in and disappears. Now, it's implied that she's still in the nightmare at the end, with the car pulling up and the red and green hood, and based on some of the deleted endings that they tried to do, it was essentially Nancy never got out, everybody died. There's other interpretations that it was never anything that actually happened to anybody at all, that the whole movie was just a nightmare. I've heard that. But the way I'm looking at it is, with this kind of sequel, what if you actually took that concept of Freddy fading into Nancy as sort of Freddy being imprisoned within Nancy? Like, she took all of his power away from him by turning her back and essentially stripping him of all the fear that her and all of her friends gave Freddy. So what if him diving into her sort of now left him in an imprisonment that's within Nancy's mind? And all of this time, Nancy has housed Freddy. And as she gets older, Freddy gets older. There's sort of almost a symbiotic kind of relationship. I think that's the correct term. Correct me if I'm wrong. So let's say we do it like this. A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 1 happens. Nancy is the only one of her friends to survive. Freddy is trapped within Nancy, making her essentially his gatekeeper, his warden, so to speak. Now, why this movie takes place is, we're talking since 1984, I believe, when the first movie came out, all the way up to present day. Nancy is a lot older than what she was in 1984. Bring back Nancy. Have her elderly, or at least having some health complications. She knows that she's getting ready to die. And that's where you get the reveal that the entire time that she's been alive, she's been aware that Freddy is within her. And Freddy has been trying to claw his way out of her. But because of her not being afraid of Freddy and stripping him of his strength, he is at her mercy. But the moment she dies, he is once again free to take his revenge on the children of Elm Street, who have now had children of their own, and some of them even have had children. Like, basically the Elm Street kids are now grandparents in some cases. So you have an entire group of kids that Freddy can now massacre once Nancy dies and Freddy is released. Now, what you do with that story is you can either have it where Nancy never had any kids because she essentially didn't want to contribute to bolstering the numbers of the Elm Street victims if Freddy was ever to be released. Obviously, she couldn't do anything about the other kids from the Elm Street parents. But I mean, you can't do nothing about that. And she tried to hang on for as long as she could to hold Freddy hostage until she just can't hold on anymore. Now, once she dies, that's when the fun begins. That's when Freddy now gets to escape and start gaining the fear from pretty much being in all the other kids' nightmares. There's a lot of them now. So he can just pick here and there from multiple kids as he's gaining his power. Now, the whole thing is with Robert Englund, there's only so much you can do with him now that he's older too. You can have it where him and Nancy do interact at some point. At least I know that's what fans are going to want to see. Just one more interaction between Freddy and Nancy, especially at an older age. That's, for a lot of fans, that would be the equivalent of Laurie Strode and Michael Myers coming face to face as they did in 2018. But the way I would do it is where Freddy was held captive within Nancy for so long, the moment that Nancy dies, the roles reverse. Freddy refuses to let Nancy pass on, and he keeps her within the dream world, holding her hostage so she can witness every single death. Essentially, almost putting her in the Amanda Krueger role, just not officially being like his mother or anything like that. We don't want anything like that. But Nancy is sort of like the warding spirit to help these kids in the dream world until you can have it where Freddy gets rid of her eventually, or you keep her, especially with sequels going on. The way I would end the movie, because I mean, you already got, to recap, Nancy's old. She's been holding Freddy hostage. Not hostage, but holding him captive, I should probably say. She dies. Freddy is released once again, but he refuses to let her soul pass on so she can witness everything that he does. Basically as a big FU to Nancy. Then you carry on to the point where Freddy really does get killed at the end of the movie, because Robert Englund can't keep going on doing it. That, or what you can do is find a replacement for the actor. That pretty much every kill that Freddy gets, instead of taking their soul and you get like a body, like a face on his chest or something, he starts de-aging. He's no longer burned. And eventually we get to a younger Freddy Krueger without the burn marks. And then he's pulled out of the dream, set on fire again, and it burns him in a different way. So that way you have a new actor with new burn scars on him, and you can carry forward that. It's sort of like a passing the torch in that kind of sense. At least that's the way I would look at it. Now, the design of Freddy, what I would want is I would want the classic Part 1 design. The same kind of burn marks that he had in Part 1, the black ears and no stripes on the sleeves. That's what I would want. I know there will probably be pushback against that because they would want his look to look consistent with Part 2, 3, 4, and so forth. But I'm looking at only Part 1 as being canon, so I would want his look to match that. Maybe just a lot older when he first gets out of the dream world. And if you want to go with the de-aging route, still hold it on there, but make the clothes cleaner as pretty much he gets younger. And then when you burn them again, they're messed up in a different kind of way. Now, you can carry on sequels from there, like I said, because there's multiple Elm Street kids now. They have multiplied because we only saw 4 of the Elm Street kids in part 1. And with a mob that formed and burned Freddy alive, there's likely a whole lot more beyond them. And it's very likely that Freddy would attack their grandchildren as well. At least that's the way I would go about it. Now, with how Freddy would act, I would probably take him back to his part 1 roots there too, where he was still kind of jokey. He had a couple comedic moments, really dark comedy, that was some things that only he understood, like where he sliced himself on the chest and you saw the maggots and everything come out. He found that to be hilarious. Nobody else would. That wasn't anything like in the crowd like, oh, that's funny. That wasn't anything like that. That was only funny to him. And that is something you kind of need to take and put into this Freddy. Now, you can have other moments where he might give you just one-liner. I'm not going to be an advocate of multiple one-liners or any kind of comedic standout moments. I'm looking for him to match his overall demeanor from part 1. Like when he cut his fingers off and he's like looking at Tina and he's smiling and laughing like, this is some funny stuff. Like, that's stuff that's only funny to him. We're not looking at that. There's nobody that really looked at anything that Freddy said or did that thought, that's really funny. There's nothing like that. None of that was intended to be funny to anybody else outside of Freddy himself. So that's kind of the way I would go with that. And then as you carry on, if you can keep that going and without any of the other sequels weighing you down, that now opens up the world to a whole new Freddy. There's no Amanda Krueger. He's no longer the bastard son of 100 maniacs. We have no idea who Freddy was before being the Springwood slasher. All of that is now erased. So we have a blank slate and an entirely new crop of Elm Street kids for Freddy to go after, and a reason to change actors, with the older actor now passing the torch to the younger one, and there being a reason for doing so. So that way fans don't have to complain, well, I don't like this guy. This isn't Robert Englund. Nobody's going to be able to replace Robert Englund. But to say that you have Robert Englund personally transforming into this younger Freddy gives you a hell of a lot of a better chance of fans accepting this younger guy than just throwing someone out there and expecting fans to accept it. That's not going to happen. At least not immediately. I mean, as someone who rather enjoyed Jackie Earle Haley's Freddy, I was perfectly fine with his Freddy. I just didn't like the makeup. It was still off-putting to see someone else other than Robert Englund play the role. At least with this, we get the best of both worlds. We get Robert back as Freddy one more time, and it passes the torch. Like I said again, I can't emphasize that enough. Passes the torch in the movie to another Freddy. But I pretty much rambled on enough about that. That would be overall my idea for how you do a Nightmare on Elm Street timeline reboot, is what I'm calling it. Similar to Halloween 2018, just using the first one as a starting point, scrapping everything else, and going on. But comment below. Let me know what you guys think and what you guys would do with I'm about to say Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street reboot. Would you continue on from where the series left off, being Freddy's Dead or Freddy vs. Jason? Or would you start off at a different sequel and using that as a jumping point from the timeline and carrying on forward? Or would you just scrap the entire series together and start from scratch? Comment below. And also, be sure to like, share, and subscribe, as well as hitting the notification bell to be alerted whenever a new video, such as this, comes out. Or if I jump on the live stream, because I've been doing a lot of commentaries lately and rather enjoying them, and more people that can enjoy them with me, the merrier. And as always, I am JG Dark, and thanks for watching.